Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Populist Podcast. I'm Chase,
I'm Charles.
and today we're joined by special guest Kara Eastman, who's running for Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I'm going to get us rolling. Do you want to go ahead and tell us who you are, why you're running, and so on?
Sure. I'm Kara Eastman. I am running again for Congress. In 2018, I was the Democratic nominee and got some national attention for unexpectedly beating a former Democratic incumbent who had been in Congress, and then unfortunately lost the general election by just 1.9% in one of the closest races in the country in 2018. And decided to run again for a number of reasons. I originally wanted to run. My background is in nonprofit work. I've worked on public policy. I've worked in communities to create healthier, safer housing for children. I've run domestic violence programs, homeless programs, and really felt like we could use some more social workers in Congress. I'm a social worker by trade. I also had an experience where my mother was diagnosed with cancer for the 5th time and prescribed a $2,500 pill that she couldn't afford. And I decided at that point that perhaps we needed some stronger voices in Congress around healthcare. After I lost in 2018, there's so many reasons not to do this again, but really I just felt like we came so close. We had built an incredible campaign and had so much momentum, and so many people were reaching out to me saying, "You've got to try again." And the reality was Donald Trump was still the president, and we still need to do something about that. And we need strong voices. We need somebody who's like actually going to stand up and fight for this district.
All right, so you touched on this already, but in 2018, you lost a very close race to a Republican incumbent. Now, with the DCCC not backing your campaign, what do you think is going to be different this time?
Well, hopefully they will come around and help us out. I think they see that they made a mistake by not doing that. But we learned so much last time. We now have the data, a reconfigured team, the right message, and an incredible strategy to be able to move forward. We know where we need to pick up votes. One of the interesting things that happened in 2018 was that Medicaid expansion passed on it was a ballot initiative, and that passed in our state. So we're looking at places where Medicaid expansion passed, but I didn't do as well. Being able to have those conversations about healthcare with people, like why would you vote for healthcare, but against the candidate that actually wants to get you healthcare? So we are feeling very confident. I mean, we still have a primary to get through, but we feel great about our chances for that. And the polls are looking very strong. We have a poll that has me tied with the incumbent and leading among moderates and independents. So we know if we can get a lot of those independents to vote for me, as well as turning out low propensity Democratic donors, we will win for sure.
All right, so you already touched on this a few times with Americans spending double on healthcare compared to what the OECD averages, and billions of dollars are being raked in by the health insurance and pharmaceutical industry. What legislation specifically would you support to bring down these costs?
I fully believe healthcare is a human right, and that we need a baseline of medical care in this country that doesn't cost the government a fortune and doesn't bankrupt families and force families to choose between taking medication they need, accessing healthcare, and putting food on the table. Uh, Congressman Pamela Jayapal's bill, HR 1384, is the solution to that, and it's called the Medicare for All Act, and it does actually show that the government saves money over time. I mean, we are projected to spend so much more even on healthcare in the next decade. We need a system that cuts costs. We need a system that allows for negotiating pharmaceutical prices. And we need a system where people actually have choice for their provider, and where providers are actually able to provide the healthcare that they want to, as opposed to having to go through insurance companies. So I do believe that we need an overhaul of our system that works for everybody. And I believe that bill right now is the best thing we have in front of us to do that.
All right, well, we're going to move to your home state of Nebraska. So, considering the large agricultural industry there, how do you plan to help farmers who have become increasingly dependent on government subsidies?
Yeah. Socialism for farmers, but not for anybody else, right? So It's the Nebraska second district where I'm running is 98% urban, but we rely heavily on Nebraska's farming industry, on our agricultural industry for jobs and for obviously access to food. 1 in 4 jobs in our state is related to agriculture. The tariffs hit our farming community really hard, and the result was a bailout by the federal government. And when I talk to farmers around the state, what they're telling me is that's not what they want. They what they want is actually to make farming fun again. They want to be able to support their families. I mean, Nebraskans are hardworking and they don't want to rely on the government to run their businesses. But when they've got that double whammy of tariffs plus climate chaos, that's we've been decimated by flooding, and they feel the impact of this more than any of us. And so we need to actually be creating policies that put the farming communities first and actually prioritize these small family farms over big subsidies and big corporate bailouts and tax cuts for the large farming companies.
All right. So we're going to switch over to foreign policy now. And with the US government spending well over $7 trillion on war since 9/11 and currently being involved with bombing 8 different countries, do you think that Congress should help curtail American involvement?
Well, we absolutely need to rethink our strategy when it comes to engaging in wars in other countries, and this idea of regime change and endless wars is what's contributed to our incredible deficit and debt in this country. And it's also just been ineffective, and we've seen that obviously. Trump has exacerbated all of this by haphazard policies, by alienating our allies, and the reality right now is, if we're going to be funding anything when it comes to foreign policy, it should be the State Department, and the State Department is significantly underfunded. We have key positions that still have not been filled. I mean, what are they doing? And this creates a huge national security problem, and inhibits our ability to engage in diplomacy first. And I think it's terrifying that we have somebody at the helm as our commander in chief who has no idea what he's doing. And the really unfortunate thing is that the incumbent Republican here is a retired military general, a brigadier general, and fully backs the president on all this stuff. And it's crazy. I mean, there's no way that he could honestly look somebody in the eyes and tell them that he feels safe in the hands of this president, but yet he does.
Next, we're going to move on to a more domestic issue, and that's immigration. So, my question is, how would you look to reform the current immigration system?
So there are a couple of things that I'm particularly passionate about. My field director for my campaign is a dreamer. She's a DACA recipient, and she actually went before the Supreme Court recently and to bear witness, and show her face as somebody who has lived here for almost all of her life. Was brought here by her parents, and is denied so many things that she wants, and is now very, very scared for the future, an uncertain future, and this idea that we could possibly deport somebody who's actually hasn't stepped foot in Mexico since she was 4 years old is crazy. This is her home. This is where she's gone to school. This is where she's contributed. She's a community organizer, and she's an amazing member of our community. And we need to respect the fact that we have so many dreamers who are afraid right now because they don't know what's going to happen in their lives. So we need to pass a Clean Dream Act. It needs to be separate from all the other bills that Congress is putting together, so that we pass it and it is law, and make sure that we're giving citizenship to dreamers, especially as long as they're following the law. My God, like, let them stay here and become citizens and contributing to our society the way they want to be. I also had an opportunity to go down to the southern border. My brother is an interpreter for the federal court system, and we visited shelters and organizations that are working directly with people on the border and across the border. And I'm bilingual in English and Spanish, so I was able to go into Mexico and also talk to some of the people either seeking asylum or trying to come here. And what we learned is like 95% of people who try to come are not going to get in. And they don't know that. And they're coming here for valid reasons. They're escaping, issues caused by climate chaos or violence or coming because they can't feed their families. And we need an overhaul. We need comprehensive immigration reform. There are ways that we can do this where, because where it's fair and equitable, and we're actually honoring the founding fathers of this country who created an America that was welcoming to outsiders. Instead of this kind of, basically what the Trump administration has done is created this sort of, whites only um, policies where that are completely racist in terms of who gets in the country and who doesn't. We're not freaking out about the Canadian border, but trying to build a wall that's completely ineffective, expensive, not the right solution. We need something that actually is going to work for the United States.
We're going to move on. This is going to be my last question. In this country, we have over 40,000 homeless veterans and a high number of veterans upset with the VA. How would you help address these problems?
I have run homeless shelters. I've run homeless programs, and uh, it's unbelievable that we could even utter those words, homeless veterans, in the United States. I mean, it's unbelievable that we could call somebody homeless, but I mean, the fact that people serve our country and then when they come home, we treat them the way that we do is just one of the most un-American, unpatriotic, and immoral things that we do in the United States. We need to make sure that veterans have the medical coverage they deserve. I've talked to a number of veterans who tell me they can't get dental coverage. We need to make sure that mental health services are in place for them and that the VA is running smoothly. And in some ways it does. I mean, I've heard from some people in Omaha who work at the VA and say things are good. There's always things we could be doing better. But when it comes to homelessness for veterans, that should be priority one. When they come back, we should be making sure that they have wraparound services, that somebody's looking out for them and prioritizing where they're going to live, what kind of job they're going to get, what kind of health services they're going to get, what kind of mental health services they need, because the people who serve our country should be prioritized.
All right. Well, I'm going to get into my final question. It's one we like to ask all the candidates we have on, and that's amongst a dwindling but still crowded Democratic presidential primary field, is there a candidate who stands out to you?
Um, so I'm still in this bucket of like I like so many of the candidates that are running, and I'm thrilled that we have so many qualified candidates to run against the worst president we have ever seen in this country by far. I think Elizabeth Warren is amazing. I align with a lot of her policies. I had an opportunity to hear Andrew Yang speak recently in person, and I was kind of blown away by how great I thought he was. He's very entertaining, and people were jumping out of their seats when he was talking. Bernie Sanders is somebody I've always admired, and I think we're just very lucky right now to have so many amazing candidates that are willing to put themselves out there to go up against a bully who is going to take shots at them left and right. And so and honestly, I'm just really excited that we can finally get through this primary and get behind the presidential nominee and just move forward because we have got to save the country.
Well, that's all we have today for you. I'd like to give you a minute if you'd like to say anything to the audience.
Well, I used to say I'm not a politician because I came from the nonprofit world and social work. Have a social work background, but I guess I have become a politician in doing this. But I strongly believe that we can change this system so that it works for regular working people and doesn't prioritize the very wealthy and large corporations. I have refused corporate PAC money in my campaign because I think that's the right way to do business as a government elected official. I think that I should be listening to my constituents and not to large corporations in terms of what they want me to do. And I think that's one step in the right direction. I want to go to Congress because I want to work on healthcare. I want to create a system that works for this country and doesn't put anybody in the position my mom was in. And I want to end corruption in politics. Getting money out of politics should be priority one for anybody who's running right now, because if you've gone through as long as I have now, 3 years of running, you know how much money it takes to run a campaign, how much time you have to spend asking people for money. And I'm very grateful for the small dollar donations that I have, but it's too time consuming. And we're spending too much on elections right now. So it is time for new types of leadership, and I am ready to get to work.
All right. That's all we have for you guys today. If you'd like to support Kara's campaign, you can find our website, social medias, and all that down in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.